In case you haven't heard, there are new mortgage rules coming into effect Canada-wide on December 15th, 2024, basically at the time of the release of this video. Why these new rules really matter for a city like Toronto, and go through some insights for the city of Toronto that we've seen throughout 2024 and how this may affect 2025. I'm Michael Ouzas. I'm a realtor here in the city of Toronto. If you ever want to book in a call to discuss what this could actually mean for you on the ground level in Toronto real estate, click on that first link in the description down below or send me a text anytime. It feels like so long ago since these new rules were announced by the Liberal government for the country when it comes to mortgage rules. One of the biggest changes we have seen since 2012. And while most of the country may not see a direct effect with these new rules, when it comes to major markets like the city of Toronto, city of Vancouver, and any of the greater Toronto area, surrounding areas, these rules can have a material effect moving forward. Instead of just talking about why these rules could play a factor in the city of Toronto, I decided to pull some data and actually go through why exactly I do feel this will have an impact for the city. You might be wondering, what exactly are those new mortgage rules? The best summary I found was actually on Royal Bank of Canada's website with the TLDR version, which basically gives us 5 key factors heading into the new year and also into these new mortgage rules. First up, the Bank of Canada announced its 5th straight interest rate cut, reducing the rate by another jumbo cut, 50 basis points down to 3.25% on the overnight lending rate. This will have a direct effect on variable rate mortgages specifically. If you are looking on the fixed rate, those are directly tied to the Canadian bond market. So take a look at what the bond market's doing if you are interested in a fixed rate mortgage. Next up, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions have new rules coming into effect on December 15th, as we discussed. Home buyers will be able to take out mortgage insurance on homes up to 1.5 million, lowering the minimum down payment. And we will go through what exactly that means in table format to really lay that out as easy as possible. They go on to mention that more Canadians will be eligible for 30-year mortgage amortizations, including all first-time home buyers and home buyers of new builds, including condos. The 30-year amortization was actually implemented for new builds earlier this year, but now when it comes to first-time home buyers buying their first property, having the ability to get a 30-year mortgage without having to put down 20% is a pretty big deal. I actually feel like for most first-time home buyers, they may not be staying in that home for 30 years. So this could actually be a way to lower the payments, have a great home for the next step in their lives, and then if they want to make a move, at least they've been able to get those lower payments for the time being. So I actually think that's a pretty good move for first-time buyers. Mortgage holders looking to switch to another lender upon renewal, and this is another rule that flew under the radar and actually was implemented about a month ago, are able to shop around for a better rate with different lenders without having to get another stress test. And that's a big factor, because if you're currently in a mortgage at, for example, 4.5%, and you're looking to get a renewal with another bank, they'll be stress testing you at that 4.5% plus 2%, so 6.5% on a stress test. If you're not able to qualify for that mortgage based on the stress test level, it'll be really difficult to shop around that mortgage. Whereas without having to qualify the stress test, that'll give you options to be able to go out and search for better rates when it comes time to renewal. And I encourage you to do so. Go talk to these banks or a mortgage broker to try and get the best rate possible upon renewal, especially as rates have come down as of late. With all this talk about down payment rules and what it actually means, decided to just put this chart together to make it really simple to see exactly where things stand. If you are looking to purchase under $1 million, nothing actually changes for you with these new rules. Unless you're a first-time buyer and you have the ability to get a 30-year amortization with less than the 20% down. So here's the minimum down payments here, $500,000. Minimum down payment is $25,000. And if you were to put down 20%, it'd be $100,000. But if you do put the minimum down, then you have the option to get that 30-year amortization, which you didn't have that option in the past. The way these minimum down payments are calculated is it's 5% on the first $500,000 and 10% on the difference. So for example, on a $600,000 purchase price, it would be 5% on the first $500,000, which is $25,000, and 10% on the difference between $500,000 and $600,000. $100,000, 10% of that $100,000, an extra $10,000, which gives you a minimum down payment of $35,000. This is where those new rules really make a difference. In fact, it's a difference of 6 figures basically across the board. Before these rules come into effect, if you wanted to purchase a property above $1 million, you always had to put down 20%. So if you were buying for $1 million, the down payment would be $200,000 plus closing costs. Now that number is changing to 1.5 million. So that's actually going to have an effect here in this price range between 1 million and basically 1,499,999. If you are looking to purchase, for example, at 1.2 million, the minimum down payment is now $95,000 $45,000, whereas in the past it was $240,000. That's a $145,000 swing on the minimum down payment required. For this video, since none of those mortgage calculators are actually available to plug in numbers, we'll save that for a future date where we can actually see what the difference is on the monthly cost and how that looks on a month-to-month basis. Make sure you like and subscribe so you do get access to that video the second it comes out. In the past, we had that $1 million wall. So basically, if you're at 999,999, the difference is very drastic when it came to a down payment. Now that number is going to change to 1.5 million. And as you can see, that $1 swing from just under 1.5 to 1.5, your minimum down payment is $175,000 difference. Now keep in mind, this is just the minimum. You can actually put down more than this number, but you don't quite have to get to that 20% if you wanted to purchase a property in that range. You might be wondering what types of properties are selling between 1 million and 1.5 million in the city of Toronto. Well, I've broken those down into some graphs and some charts to really show exactly why these new mortgage changes will have a material effect on the city of Toronto. Let's start here with row and townhouse property types. And in 2024, there were 784 sales, at least at the time of this video, which is a big bulk of the year. We do have a couple weeks left in 2024. So this number may change a little bit, but overall, halfway through December, this is a pretty good metric of where things are at for 2024. The bulk of sales for rows and townhouses happened between 1 million and 1.5 million. As you can see here in this chart, there was almost about 400 sales for that price range, which is more than basically all the other categories combined. If we take a look at the median price for a townhouse with a Toronto address, and I didn't filter by area or amount of bedrooms or anything like that, just strictly townhouse in Toronto. Median price 1.17, average price 1.23 basically. And if we're taking a look at median days on market, and this property type is a competitive property in the city of Toronto, about 13 median days on market and 21 average days on market. Next up, we have semi-detached properties, and these are always the hottest property in the city of Toronto because it is that extra step up going from a townhouse to a semi. The next one up, of course, a detached, which we'll get to in a second. But looking at the 1 million to 1.5 range, 1,000 sales out of 2,308. And that's a big portion of the amount of sales that happened for semi-detached between that 1 million to 1.5 million dollar mark. If we take a look at the median price, 1,180,000, and average price 1.3 million. Median days on market, and this is something for semis, as we'll get to the months of inventory very shortly, was 10, and just over 2 weeks on the market for semi-detached in the city of Toronto. You might be a little surprised to know that for the Toronto detached market, the price point between 1 million to 1.5 actually had one of the most volumes of transactions for that property type of the detached market. And for the detached market, there were 7,300 sales as of data recording this video, and a big portion of them, basically 3,000 of those, were between 1 million and 1.5 million dollars. The median price for a detached property, 1.36, and the average price over 1.726. And that's pretty common for the city of Toronto because the detached properties, especially the ones in the best areas, are much more expensive than this price range. And that's where you do see that there were 1,737 sales above $2 million for the detached market, with another 1,300 or so between that 1.5 to 2 million. Average days on market for a detached property in Toronto, about 3 weeks, and median days 11. You might be wondering why this is an important factor for a city like Toronto. Well, generally for these three property types, so if you are looking at freehold properties, so row townhouses, semi-detached, and detached properties, if you've watched any videos on this channel, you know that I always discuss the months of inventory. And that months of inventory number, we take the active listings divided by number of sales, will give us a months of inventory. These properties, when they get into the lower months of inventory, so 0 to 2 is a seller's market. That's where we see these price points really take off. We take a look at February of 2022, and of course, that was the peak of the market from a price perspective. The months of inventory for detached, semi-detached, and townhouses were all below 1. In fact, for semis was 0.5. So basically any property on the market was selling. In fact, there was 2 sales for every 1 property, as anything that was carrying over from the month before was also starting to get absorbed. If we look at where things went to in July of 2022, and that's when we saw interest rates go up tremendously, the months of inventory skyrocketed. And I say skyrocketed in a sense that detached properties went up to 3 months of inventory. So basically 1 in 3 properties were selling. Semi-detached still remained in a buyer's market at 1.8, and rows and townhouses at 2.37. That's one of the highest we saw in July. And then as we move forward into April 2023, when rates did come back down, and we did see prices start to move. That's where we saw those months of inventory really start to pull back. And for the detached, 139, semi-detached 0.94, and townhouses 1.2. As we continue to move forward, we saw ebb and flow up in the 3s and then back down into the 1s and 2s. And then we hit a high in September of 2024. So some of the most inventory we have seen basically ever for these three property types were in September of 2024 of this year, of course. Detached almost at 4 months of inventory, semi-detached 2.6, and rows and townhouses also at that 4 months of inventory. We've seen those numbers pull back here as we've gone through basically the end of the year through November and into December. We're in and around that 2 to 2.5 months of inventory. Those are new mortgage rules and why they may have an effect for these three types of properties heading into the spring market, which is already starting to pick up a little bit of steam as we go forward. We're noticing for these three property types, any of the great properties that are out there, maybe they're fully renovated, they're priced really well, and they're in the best locations, are selling pretty quickly right now for great prices for those products. It'll be interesting as we go through to see how these new mortgage changes will have an effect going forward and if it will bring more buyers to the table for this property segment. The other factor that I'm interested to see is that if we do start getting more step-up buyers, so those who already have 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom condos heading into the freehold space, so townhouses, semis, or detached, will that unlock more inventory for the 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom condos into the market, which has already been relatively slow throughout the year, but that'll be remain to be seen as we head forward. And if we start getting more first-time buyers coming into that category, as rates have also come down quite a bit. Same thing for investors looking to get into the market at prices that we haven't seen in quite some time. If you want to book in a call to discuss how this could matter for you, click that first link down below. I'm Michael Ouzas. Thanks for watching.